Plot. It's a very basic concept in stories. Somebody define it for me. Yeah, Robbie.
Like what goes on, like what happens.
Good. What goes on or what happens. So the events that occur. Thank you, Robbie. Here's your textbook definition. You'll find that textbook definitions bore me, but it's a good place to start. A series of related events which compose a narrative or story. You'll find that I use the word narrative a lot. The word narrative refers to a story, events. So don't be scared by me using the word narrative. I'm simply talking about stories. You've heard of narration before. Narration is the process of telling a story. This is all the same sort of word. You will not have to answer a multiple choice question or a matching item or even a fill in the blank where you recount this definition. So don't worry about that. You'll do more realistic writing than just recounting these sorts of issues. Let's talk about some basic principles with plot. Important things to remember. With plot, I want you to remember two facts. One, time. Plot events occur on a timeline. Plot is about time. Setting is not necessarily about time. There's not necessarily a before and after. Characters are not about time, not a before and after. What we've got here is plot events happening before and after. That means that if you're talking about foreshadowing, it's a plot issue. What's the literary term for a reference to something that happened in the past? Robbie? No, foreshadowing is the future. What's the past one?
Flashback.
Thank you, Daniel. Flashback. Excellent. Flashback is therefore an issue of plot. The second principle is the one that's most important, the one that you'll find me focusing on the most. What drives a plot? What makes it move forward? Yeah, Josiah. Very good. What do we call that in literature? No. The problem is correct, but we have a technical term for that. Robbie? Conflict. You guys are doing a great job. You're with me so far, I hope. If I move a little bit too fast for you sometimes, you can do two things. One, feel free to slow me down. Two, realize that I just did turn on the recorder. This is being recorded and will be posted on YouTube if you ever want to watch it again. No, there's no camera in this room. Before you start freaking out and looking around. It's just full video. It's full video capture of what's on the screen and my voice.
Why are you putting it on YouTube?
So you can watch it again if you want to. What's what called? This video? I don't know. I haven't posted it yet. Yes, Josiah? Yeah, perfect. All right. Sorry, I distracted you with YouTube. Let's get back to plot. Conflict. Conflict drives the plot. It's the most important concept in plot. All other aspects of plot that you know of on that diagram refer to conflict. Time and conflict. Oh, here it is. Who can label it?
Oh, I got it.
Robbie, come on up.
I don't know if I can get all of them, but
I think it would be appropriate to say, go Robbie, it's your birthday. Yeah, you're going to have to write it somewhere else probably. Tell you what, Robbie, watch this. We're going to do something cool. Write the word right there. Put the pen down. How cool is that? Keep going. Robbie's doing a fantastic job so far. I'll give you a hint, Robbie. There is one other really important portion of the plot that I would like to see on there. Can anybody tell Robbie what it is? Yeah. Actually, yes. Climax is mislabeled. Can you tell me where climax should be? There you go. So that is a correction that we have to make. Let's let Robbie make that correction. Good, Robbie. Thank you. Josiah, what's the missing portion?
I don't know if it's falling action.
You know what? I don't see enough of a distinction between falling action and resolution to distinguish them. So in my class, you don't have to worry about it.
Isn't it the one over,
Uh-huh. Does anybody remember what it is? Yeah, Nate.
conflict or something?
Not foreshadowing often happens here, Nate. You're absolutely correct. But it might and it might not.
Oh, initial conflict?
Initial incident. Very
Yeah.
close, Robbie. Good job. You folks are making me very happy.
I don't know how to spell it.
Who knows how to spell it?
So what?
Initial.
Oh, I see.
Call it out for him.
Guys, come on.
Come on, Jasmine, call it out. That's good enough. All right, Robbie, thank you very much. That was excellent. Nice job. Yeah, the only difference, Robbie, is that it would be termed initial incident, not initial conflict. Let's quickly go over definitions. Exposition. Let's see. Sorry, I'm still getting... Zach. Exposition. What is the exposition of a plot? What do you get in exposition?
Like the setting
And?
characters.
Correct. Introduction of setting and characters. Initial incident. Connor, what's introduced in the initial incident?
Like the conflict.
Conflict. Every narrative, every story has three elements at its core. In the exposition, you get 1 and 2. In the initial incident, you get 3. Once the exposition and initial incident have happened, you're ready to go. Sometimes that takes a little while. Sometimes it happens on page 1. Sometimes it happens in sentence 1. Depends upon the story. Depends upon the novel. Depends upon the film, television show, what have you. Let's see. Rising action, definition. Robbie.
Building up to the climax.
That's true, but what's building up to the climax?
Like the problem, like you get closer to like something or
The problem is intensifying
right.
and building to the climax. Excellent. So rising action is where the problem is intensifying. What's the climax?
Oh.
Daniel.
Basically, like the most exciting part, like it's where everything adds up.
You know what, Daniel? That's probably what you were taught. Unfortunately, it's wrong. Scary, isn't it? Okay, so, Daniel, let me ask you this question. For most every high school student in the world, what's the most exciting part of a story?
When the action starts.
No. For most every high school student in the world, what's the most exciting part of a story? You've been assigned a story. What's the most exciting part for you? The end, because it's over.
Oh, okay.
The most exciting part of the story is going to vary from person to person. It's going to be different for you than for Jasmine than for Nate. Now you could say, no, most everybody reacts in the same way. Not necessarily. Different people have different reactions. So I want everybody to be very clear on this. I do not like that definition because it's not a clear definition. Everybody reacts differently. So Nate, you have a different idea. What do you think about climax?
Like the turning point of the story.
Turning point of the story is much closer and much better. What's turning? Nate, I'll give you a hint. After the climax, what is over? Story hasn't necessarily ended, but something has ended at the climax. You're very close to it, Nate. I'm going to give you just a little bit of help. Sarah.
Conflict?
The conflict is over. climax is the ending event of the conflict. Is that the same for everybody reading the story? Yes. Therefore, it's a better definition. You guys remember, hopefully you read this, freshman year, the Most Dangerous Game. Are they still reading that freshman year? Yeah. Very strong person versus person conflict, right? One guy against another guy. They're fighting. One guy wants to hunt the other guy. It's a very physical conflict, very man versus man kind of macho conflict. Can anybody tell me what the plot event in that story that is the climax is?
When he jumps off the island into the ocean after escaping going there.
But according to our definition, that's not necessarily the climax yet.
Oh no, when he's in his room.
And what do they do?
Doesn't one push the other into the dogs or something?
They duel. They fight. Connor, your memory's very good, especially for a story that you read a year ago. Don't worry. There's a little gaps, but you basically got the right idea. He was in the room. They fought. At the end of that fight, why is the conflict over, Connor? Correct. Most Dangerous Game is an excellent story for us to look at. Rainsford won. Rainsford was the guy being hunted, and General Zaroff, I believe, was the man who was hunted.
Yeah, like it didn't say that.
Hold on. It was clear enough because it said Rainsford slept very well in Zaroff's bed. He's not going to do that unless Zaroff's dead. There you go. So, the point is that that event in the story leads to one of their deaths. Therefore, the conflict is over because there's no antagonist anymore. It's all ended. The resolution, everything after, for the Most Dangerous Game, I think is about 2 sentences. Talking about him sleeping comfortably in the bed. Daniel.
Have you ever seen the movie?
No, I haven't. It's an old, it's a 30s film.
That had nothing to do with the book.
Yeah. Well,
Completely different.
yep. That's it. That's your plot diagram. Shh. Remind you once again that this is a timeline and that everything is fueled by the conflict. This is rising because the conflict is rising. This is going down because the conflict has now ended, and there's nowhere for it to go but down. All of this is conflict. That's the case. Let's talk about them. 5 conflicts. And I'm about to give you, I just gave you a very precise definition of climax. I'm about to give you very precise definitions of these also. Somebody want to try one?
Like,
Define the conflict. Explain what the conflict is.
alright.
Yeah, Robbie, which one you want?
Sounds like person versus person.
Person versus person. Define it for me.
Isn't that basically what it says? Like two people like not getting along, like going against each other, like having like problems, trying to like
Okay.
whatever.
Could be. You're getting there. There's one stapler here.
Right.
Say Shelby needs to use it. Let's say I need to use it. We can't both use it. So we have a person versus person conflict, right?
Facing a problem, like trying to overcome.
Well, hold on. Pause for a moment. Let me get there. You're rushing a little bit too much, Robbie. Shelby and I both want to use the stapler. We can't both use the stapler. One of us can and the other one can't. So we have a person versus person conflict. Do I have a person versus person conflict with everything about Shelby or just on this one issue? Just on this one issue, right? So she and I have a person versus person conflict with this one issue. How often do you have a person versus person conflict with the entirety of another human being? Sometimes. Sometimes you hate everything about them and their entire existence seems to cause you pain and discomfort. That's pretty sad, and it's also pretty rare, thankfully. So here, Robbie has got the right answer, but it's not specific enough. So let me specify it for you. The goals or interests of the protagonist conflict with the goals or interests of the antagonist, who is another character. They cannot both have their way. So now in the Shelby story, she's going to be the protagonist because I always want to be the antagonist. She wants to use the stapler. I want to use the stapler. We can't both have our way. Therefore, we have person versus person conflict. In the Most Dangerous Game, what is Rainsford's interest? What does he want? To leave. And Jake?
I was going to say he wanted to get off the island.
He wants to get off the island. Furthermore, he wants to get off the island alive, right?
Yeah.
So he wants to live and he wants to escape the island. What is Zaroff's interest? Yeah, Josiah. Killing him. But in this particular story, killing Rainsford. Do you see how the goals or interests of Rainsford, staying alive, are conflicting with Rainsford's interest, killing him? They can't both have their way. Rainsford cannot escape the island and make himself happy, and allow Rainsford to kill him and make Zaroff to kill him and make Zaroff happy. That's conflict. But here's what I want to caution you on, and this is why I decided to specify Robbie's definition. It's really difficult to write about, oh, Rainsford and Zaroff have a conflict, unless you understand what precisely that conflict is. Jake, did you have a question?
Did Zaroff say that he would let him live if he survived for like 3 days or something?
Yeah, but yeah, he was lying to him. That's correct. Thank you, Josiah. But you are also correct, Jake, that he did say that lie. Connor.
Is there any way to have a story like without a protagonist and an antagonist? Like,
Without a conflict?
no, but like instead of one being good and one being bad, it's kind of like they're both just happen to be okay.
Yeah, I've read stories. I've seen stories in film elsewhere where everybody seems to be a good guy, and the problems don't seem to be all that extreme. Now, the problem in the Most Dangerous Game, and Connor, this is an excellent question. The problem in the Most Dangerous Game is extreme. One man wants to survive, the other man wants to kill him. That doesn't happen very often. That's pretty extreme. But I've seen more personal conflicts in stories that seem to be not extreme. They don't deal with life or death. They might be little misunderstandings that aren't that big. Sometimes people criticize those stories as not having all that strong a conflict. So yes, Connor, absolutely. All stories are created individually and uniquely, and that happens sometimes. Daniel.
Isn't the protagonist is he not the good guy? He's not the good guy.
It's not necessarily the good guy, it's the person, and this is good. Definition of protagonist is the character with whom the reader identifies most closely. Okay? So that could be somebody who's actually kind of nasty. And there is a concept called an anti-hero, who is a protagonist who actually acts like a villain. But the audience identifies with that person. Right? Yeah, go ahead. Good. No, that's fine, Zach. So let's make this very clear. Okay, I'm going to do this verbally. Since this is the second question on the same topic, here's your definition. The protagonist is the character with whom the reader identifies most closely. The person you feel most connected to. Think about the Most Dangerous Game again. You know the most about Rainsford. He seems to be closest to you because the author brings him closest to you. Zaroff seems to be this mysterious, unknown character who sometimes lies, and sometimes we don't know what he's up to. You are closest to Rainsford, therefore he is the protagonist. Okay, so I'll say it one more time. The protagonist is the character with whom the reader identifies the most. Antagonist, the character or thing that opposes the protagonist. The one that causes the problem for the protagonist. So if you identify with Shelby the most, and she's your protagonist, then that must mean that I'm the antagonist because I'm the one that's causing her a problem. We've got time for one or two more of these. Jazz, what do you want to do?
Let's do person versus nature.
Excellent. What do you understand person versus nature to be?
Like someone like against like everything.
Okay. Give me an example. Someone against everything. Give me an example of a person versus nature conflict. It could be real, it could be fictional.
Like I'm just guessing, but
Oh, but if there are other people hating that person, then it's either person versus person or it's person versus society. Okay? Now, look at what we've got here, Jasmine. Person versus person. Protagonist, antagonist, right? Person versus nature. Protagonist, antagonist. Jasmine, what is your antagonist in this conflict? Yeah. And what is an aspect of nature? Can you tell me an aspect of nature that might cause me a problem? Yeah. Well, I don't think trees fall on their own accord, but maybe the wind would blow it over or something would happen. Yeah. There you go. That's what we've got. Interlopers is... Yeah. Josiah, you had a question. In which case, he has a lot of different conflicts. Perhaps when he is fighting against Scylla and Charybdis. Do you remember how Charybdis was the whirlpool? Right? That was a conflict with nature because that's a feature of the ocean or the sea. Oh, the bag of wind that he has, given by King Aeolus? Man. No, we're talking about the Odyssey. Although the Odyssey and SpongeBob do share a number of qualities in common. Yeah, see? Jasmine, did you ever notice that they were making a subtle reference to the Odyssey in the SpongeBob movie? Trust me, the people who write those things, the people who animate them, are intelligent, literate people. They've read the Odyssey and they bring it into SpongeBob. They think it's funny. I think it's funny. I thought that movie was incredibly entertaining. I loved it. Shh, back on track. Here's your definition for person versus nature. Notice it's written in typical Clarksonian language, very specific. Why? This will make it easier for you to write about it. You're going to have to start writing about it pretty soon. The goals or interests of the protagonist conflict with the natural function of the environment. I think everybody living in New Orleans at the time of Hurricane Katrina understand what a person versus person, or a person versus nature conflict is. The natural function of a hurricane, the natural function of a tornado, the natural function of a wildfire, the natural function of an earthquake causes problems with my interest of staying alive. Or it could be much easier. The snow could cause problems with my interest to getting to school on time or to being safe in my car. Or the rain could cause a problem with my interest of staying dry. This morning, as I rode my bike to school, the cold was causing a problem with my interest of staying warm. That's a really benign, little, simple conflict, not life or death. And it wouldn't make a very good story. I'm serious, it wouldn't be very interesting. So Connor, you talk about that sort of thing, it's not very interesting when the conflict is really low and there's not all that much problem.
Well, I didn't mean like that. I meant like, you just, like, it could still be like killing, but there's not one person that's being the bad person, you know, maybe it's like...
Usually the antagonist might not be very evident, but there's always an antagonist there, okay? Sometimes the antagonist is a part of a person, not the entirety of a person. Sometimes it's a group of people. There are all sorts of different ways of identifying the antagonist. But Connor, your question's great because I will require you to be able to identify the antagonist. But I'll help you with that. There's no problem. Josiah. Yes, antagonists can be antagonists and then become helpful characters. They can be helpful characters who become antagonists. And remember, a protagonist and antagonist can be the same person. That's always fun. Hold on one second. We have about a minute left in class and you're packing up. That's great. We will stop here and pick it up there tomorrow. However, here's what you need to know. Tomorrow, you must read Contents of a Dead Man's Pockets and Mask of the Red Death. And we start class in the exact same way with our 5-question true-false reading check. So when we get here tomorrow, we'll do it a little bit faster. You're familiar with the process now. And we will continue with our plot concepts. And don't forget, within a day or two, this will all be posted on YouTube also, so you can review it in case I went too fast for you at any time. Questions? Contents of a Dead Man's Pockets and The Mask of the Red Death, they are in the unit guide.